Yes, I consent. All right, let's go to our participants.
Special table.
I'm gonna
Hey folks, Dave again. I don't know if you can see me on the camera, but just to give, for those going to the dunes, another quick weather update. Currently looking at a forecast, if you can see on the camera. Tomorrow it's going to be 120, but thank God we're not going to be there tomorrow. Saturday is 113 for high, Sunday is 111. So even though we're going to be there early in the morning and late in the evening, do bring plenty of liquid to stay hydrated. So that's your PSA from Dave.
And it looks like it's completely sunny.
Completely sunny, and actually going to be a bit breezy too, especially in the evenings. We're up about 10-mile-an-hour forecast winds for Saturday and about 12 on Sunday for those staying late on Sunday.
Awesome.
If we do have some breezes and you're concerned about changing lenses or whatnot, you will be at an overlook where your car will be right there. Or another suggestion, if you have two camera bodies and you want to keep two lenses on, and you may not have to change your lenses at all. So that's a little tip for that.
Thank you, Dee. That's awesome.
Gotcha.
As long as we're throwing out tips, something I mentioned to Dee that we needed to fit in and maybe just make mention of people is, for those who don't always shoot on tripods, it's always good to remember when you put your camera on your tripod to turn off your image stabilization, because that will cause unwanted results, put it that way.
Thank you. That is an important tip.
Bring a hand towel and a rubber band, and take the white hand towel and the rubber band and rubber band it around your lens, and then you can pull it up over your head. It will keep your camera shielded and keep it from overheating if you're out there later in the day. Keep you from overheating too.
Yeah, that's a great tip too, Bob.
By the way, if anyone has any questions at all, before we head out there, feel free to contact Paul or myself, and we can field any questions you might have.
I love your background, Nicole.
Thank you. Thank you. I took that last year on a trip to Colorado. That's on the way to Ouray.
Oh, nice. Yeah, that's gorgeous.
Yeah. It's a fun trip. Lots of pretty places.
Miracle, did you do the Miracle Highway or whatever it is, the $1 Million Highway?
Yeah. It's kind of an overlook, I think, as you're coming out of Durango and then you're going down to Silverton.
We did the opposite way.
Did you go the opposite way?
And on the motorcycle.
Yeah, I know. That's kind of a fun way to do that road.
That's the whole reason we went to Ouray was because Steve wanted to drive the motorcycle through that road.
We had a little small travel trailer and I saw big, huge travel trailers and I was like, oh my God.
Going in at first, we saw tractor trailers coming off of there and I'm like, oh my gosh, what are we getting into?
That's a scary road.
Yeah.
They were doing road work on it last year and I don't know how they do that.
Well, the scary part was the day before going into Ouray. We went on this road and you had two ways to get there. And one of the ways was closed because they had spent all day with a helicopter and emergency crews getting a car out that had gone over the cliff.
Oh, that's not good. That's not good.
I don't do heights. I don't like roads that have cliffs right off the edge. That is
Oh, you wouldn't like that road then.
not my cup of tea.
It's just sheer drop down. There's no guardrail.
Yeah.
I was scarred as a child growing up in Hawaii, and my dad was fearless, and he would take us on crazy roads that were really scary. So I'm scarred, and now I just don't like those kinds of roads.
Yeah.
Now that I have autonomy and say over my life and my safety, like nope.
I was just like, oh my God, just drive slow. I told my husband, just drive slow.
Or fast to get us through it as quickly.
Yeah.
Actually, what scared me the most, more than that on the back of the motorcycle, was just after we got out of Colorado and into northern Arizona, coming across the desert and the wind that was blowing across there scared me to death more than anything else.
On a motorcycle, yeah, I would imagine that might have been a little bit nerve-wracking there.
And it was the middle of the day, and this was just a couple of weeks ago. It was so hot. We were going to stop. I'd never been to Four Corners, and we were going to stop at Four Corners, and there was a line just to pull in. And I said to my husband, yeah, if we had the truck, okay. But on the back of the motorcycle with the black pavement hitting us in the middle of the afternoon in July, no.
I think that's about when they just opened, the Navajo Nation just opened everything up.
Yeah. A lot of the places were closed, and we had trouble stopping for just to cool down. Like we figured we could pull into even a McDonald's and get a Coke and sit in the lobby for a while and cool down. Most places were closed. We found a Taco Bell that was open and actually let us sit.
Wow.
Wow. That's crazy.
It was fun. The whole trip was fun though.
Oh, I watched your pictures. It looks like you guys are having fun despite some of your issues. What's a trip out without having some issues, right?
And you know me and my travel, Juju.
Oh my God, we got stuck in the mud on Saturday with our horses and horse trailer. That was fun. I had to flag somebody down to pull us out.
Oh my gosh. Well, you've traveled with me. You're brave.
Yeah, I'm so glad I'm not doing home health anymore, because during monsoon season down here, we would have to drive way out into the desert. And so when the monsoons hit, we would get stuck out in all the dirt roads and everything, because they're so rural, it's really scary, flash floods and everything.
Yeah. We were we know better too. We went up on the rim just to ride our horses, and we parked and it rained for about 15-20 minutes, and next thing I know, we were stuck. We had to pull the horses out of the trailer. We had to unhook the trailer, and we still couldn't get out. It was like, dang it. It's a good thing there's a billion people up there, so it was easy to find somebody.
You'd always ditch the car and ride the horses, right?
Well, yeah, I thought about that. I'm like, well, we could ride home.
Yeah.
Take a long time, but
Where are you, Nicole?
Payson. So we're not far. We're just underneath the Mogollon Rim.
Okay. How far are you from Anne Marie?
I'm about 2 hours from Prescott.
Okay. My
Matters.
geography in Arizona is not very.
So I would be east of her.
Okay.
I'm
And-
kind of about due north of Scottsdale, Fountain Hills area.
Oh, okay. I know where that is.
Yeah.
Mountain Hills. I've been there.
Just up the highway from there. So you're kind of in Tucson. My husband and I are going to Bisbee this weekend. Can you
Oh.
recommend any great places to take pictures for me?
Oh my gosh, everywhere. You're gonna be blown away when you
I'm
see
going to
it.
jump in super quick and just ask Ken Johnson, are you going to be at dinner at the Dunes on Saturday night? Hello, Ken Johnson.
Unmute or mic.
Yeah. Dee, you may want to private chat with him. Okay, continue, Colette.
Oh, I'm checking the weather because I don't think it's gonna be that bad in Bisbee, actually.
No, I think we might have some storms, which would be fine I like clouds. We love clouds in our pictures.
Yeah, it'll add to the mood, and let's see here.
I did book us a ghost tour. I thought that would be fun.
Yes, so it's gonna be in the 80s this weekend, but it looks like it might rain. So just obviously, well, you'll be staying there, so you don't have to worry about driving in it, right?
No.
Yeah.
We rented a VRBO, so we have a nice, cute little house to stay at. And
Oh, it's so eerie. I love that place. It's so spooky and creepy, but I know you're going for that reason, so that's good. But we went for Halloween one year, my husband and I, before we had kids.
Wait. Where did you go?
Bisbee.
For Halloween? That could be
Yes.
such a cool
Yeah.
fall fest / on the road.
Yes, and we did the
For
haunted
Halloween.
tour where you walk around because there are some creepy people in Bisbee. I'm just gonna put it out
Okay.
there.
I need to jump in again and just let Dee know that Gail Madigan will be at dinner on Sunday and Ken Johnson will not. Gail Madigan is a yes, Ken Johnson is a no.
But you're gonna love it, Nicole. Like there's a lot of steps, so you'll be getting a good solid workout. So that's exciting. You can eat whatever you want. But yeah, we stayed at like a little kind of like a bed and breakfast. I don't know if it was through Airbnb or what. I think it was a long time ago, but they have.
Okay, we're getting started, you guys. You might want to just take it to the chat now. Turning some time
Call me.
over to Rack.
call me, I'll call you.
Hello. Can you guys see me and hear me? I can see
Yes.
myself vaguely. Hi, Nicole. How are you? Can you hear me? Right on. A few admin stuff here real quick. Trying to get the mic set up for the audience out here. Test. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? You can hear me fine? All right, on. Welcome. Can I have your attention, please? Down in front. Thank you. Hey, guys. Even though all you guys out there in on screen that we can see you, we want to say welcome to the August meeting for Arizona PPA. Thank you. Oh, Dave's telling me to stare at the camera there. I am not used to that. I'm used to being behind the camera, not in front of it. So I just want to say welcome to everybody and thank you for being here or at home It's a very unique opportunity that we have an opportunity to do these days. And me and Tom were talking about it, and it's very cool that you guys can be way up north and then still be with us without having to really stress yourselves out. Yeah, I just want to welcome to some guests we have today. We have Corbin, we have Kirby, and we have Deb. Can you please stand up? Come on up here so we can let them know who the guests are. They can't see you. You have to come up here and say hi. Just wave, and you can go back to your desk. No, not yet. No.
Okay.
All right, I want to welcome the board of directors up here. It's been a while. We have not done that in a long time, where we've actually had the opportunity to sit up and get to see who's who on the board of directors. Dave, Andrew, Tom, Herb, John, Anne Marie, and Calais. I know you're out there. She's waving right there. Clay's our social media marketing, so all the cool stuff that you've seen on the website and Instagram and everything, that's her magic that she's doing for us all. You got Andrew, he's the webmaster. You got Tom, executive director. You got Rick, director at large. Herb is our membership. John is our Fall Fest. Calais is, of course, our education chair right now. And then we have Dave, our, the guy before me, past president. And then we have Julia, who's not, she's on the phone outside. So when you see us, say hi, we'll see you, and we'll say hi to you as well. So I want to say thank you. Now, just like every other meeting that we have our mandatory announcements we have to do. Andrew's going to come up and talk to us about PPA. He is one of the new PPA liaisons for Arizona. So am I. And then so is Anne Marie. Anne Marie is what am I saying? Anne Marie is managing the Zoom, and I'm holding the mic, and Andrew's the only one that's really not doing anything right now, so he can talk to you.
That checks out.
Yeah, so completely we're unprepared for this, so I don't have a whole lot to say, but we're your PPA counselors. We're here to help you guys answer any questions, support you guys. So if anybody has questions, has anything that they want to talk to Rex, Anne Marie, and I about, we're here to help. IPC is coming up. I want to say the early bird deadline is August 17th. And there's a late deadline coming up, but again, I wasn't as prepared as I should have been, so I apologize. But IPC
I'll look it up and put it in the chat.
Anne Marie will put it in the chat. And then we have Imaging USA coming up in January as well. Don't have the dates for that, but Anne Marie will put that in the chat. Would love to see everybody there. Thank you. Can we mute that guy?
Once Anne Marie gets it, she'll pass it out to us here too. You guys are going to be the first ones to get it though out there. All right. And also we do have our CPP classes going on here within Arizona, within the organization. Myself, Andrew, and Jim Walls are the CPP liaisons. So if you're interested and want to continue on with it, please let us know. We had a miscommunication earlier in the month where we missed a class. So I shot the email out to all those that were already signed up for it. So please accept my apologies, and then we'll do better for next time. And we're going to reschedule that class for you. What's coming this Saturday? Arnie, what's coming this Saturday, Arnie?
We're on the road at Imperial Dunes.
That's right. We're on the road with Imperial Dunes. Raise your hand if you're going. Hey, Christine's going. Dee's in charge, so we're all going to look to him. Michelle's going. Who else do I have there? That's the only ones that are on only one stream here. See, Bob said he might go when we had the meeting last week. Who else? That's all I see for now. Very cool. And of course, the one that we've all been waiting for from last year to now is Fall Fest. That's right. Fall Fest is coming. And it's on. For now. We'll let John tell you about it. John, come on up.
Hi, everybody. Yeah, we've had a lot of discussion over the last few months about Fall Fest and where we were going to have it, and we had a lot of suggestions and a lot of ideas, but it all came down to we really want to go back to Monument Valley, so we're going back to Monument Valley. And this year, it's last year was a rough year for the nations, and they were closed completely. This year, they're at 50%, but they're opening back up. And we got our fingers crossed. So we are going to be, tonight, we're going to start taking registrations for AZPPA members. And we want you to go online to our website, and it is open now for registration. Just go into the meetings, the monthly meetings, and you'll find a link to Fall Fest, October 8th, 9th, and it's Friday, Saturday. So we have some good things there. There's a video there for you to watch. We are going back to Effie Yazzi's house, and a good friend of Bruce Roscoe. Everybody should know Bruce, that's in Arizona PPA. He's done a lot for the nations, and he's really made friends, and he's really well respected up on the Indian Nation. So take a look at that and join us. We are open until September 17th to just AZPPA members, and we're limiting this. We're limiting this to, what did we decide, guys? Four fingers and a zero. Okay, so 40. We're limiting it to 40 participants, okay? And we have a block of rooms at Golding's, just outside the park, where you can register your own room. You have to go on there, but mention AZPPA so you get that rate. And if you have any questions after you look at the video and after you go to the site, please give me a call, give me an email, let me know. We've already had some interest from people outside of Arizona PPA, but we're holding them off until September 7th. So you guys have until September 7th to register at the member price of $299 for getting in, $299 for getting into the parks and going to Effie's house. Hotel rooms will be on your own. And after September 8th, it's going to go up to $399 for members and regular PPA outside of Arizona PPA. And then also $499 for anybody else, non-members, to register. So like I said, if you have any, $599, it just went up, guys. See how fast it's going up? It's really, so the demand is there. So go online, give me an email, give me a text, let me know what you're thinking, and if you want to do that, you should sign up as soon as possible. And
if I'm not mistaken, this is not a trip that I can take myself. These are
no.
unique opportunities that no one can do if they don't have the connections that have been made
Right.
with Effie and with the guide.
Right. We're looking to be in the park for over 8 hours, from sunrise till past sunset. So that's a good 10 to 12 hours possibly, and it's photographing all day long, and lunch and dinner will be provided. And what else, guys? I did. 7th, yes, until the next monthly meeting. So keep tabs on that and get in there as soon as possible. Like I said, I've already had people contacting me from outside of Arizona PPA. And it's a really popular place to go. But like we were saying, there's places that you're going to see that most tours don't go to. Yes. Oh, was.
My question was, not a question, it was a statement. My statement is, you can't take this trip on your own. There's no way that you can go to some of the places
No.
that the group is going to. This is exclusive access to places and people that no one gets to see.
This is right now, the nation is at 50%. They're only allowing 50% of what they normally allow in. They're not allowing private vehicles in, so we have to go in on a tour Jeep, open Jeep. And the 8 hours, most of the tours go in for 3.5, 4 hours at the most. And that's it. And they take you to certain places, the iconic places, yes. But we're going to see some stuff of the Navajo culture and family life at Effie's house in Hogan. So it's really something pretty exciting that most people aren't ever going to get a chance to do this. I think if Arizona Highways did something like this, it would be upwards of $2,500 at least for something like this. So golden opportunity, guys. So take advantage of it while it's still at the early bird price. All right.
John, did you tell them who Effie is?
I think, yeah, I think what I'm trying to get you guys to do is go to the website, and there's a video and an explanation of the relationship that Bruce Roscoe has built for AZPPA with Effie Yazzie. She's pretty much the matriarch of the tribe up there in the park, and she has been sick. You know, she had COVID, and she's over it now, and she's getting better. And they're all looking for our business, so we really want to take advantage of going up there and doing something that most people don't get a chance to do. Okay, so take a look at the video. If you have any questions after that, give me a call. All right. Oh yeah, Bob Coates. He helped with the video. So, and I think it's his velvety voice that does the narration. Okay. Bob Coates is for hire. Okay, thanks.
Thanks, John. Thank you very much. That was very good. For those of us that are here that didn't get to see the message she sent to everybody out there, IPC early deadline is 17 August. The late deadline is 31 August, with the judging being 12 through 15 September. Imaging is coming up as well. It's 16 through 18 January in Maryland, right on the harbor. It's going to be a lot of fun. And that's in January of 2022. And make sure you check, they've still got the rates. And I got an email today, I believe, that the rooms are about 50% filled, that they have the reduced rates for us. So make sure that you go on to PPA if you want to go to sign up and go to imaging and see me there, my happy smiling face, then I'd love to see you there as well. And I'll be there bright and cheery. And also remember, there are pre-convention classes that they're having as well. So take a look. They've got a lot of things out there for a lot of interest. So please go out and look. Normal people will be there too, John. Andrew will be there. Well, I don't know if he's normal, but you know, he's close, but you know. It's all right. Now, enough waiting here. Speaker of the evening is Miss Jennifer Warner, a fine art conservation wildlife photographer. She's the chair of the ethics committee of the North American Nature Photography Association. Whew, that's a mouthful. And she has multiple magazines published. You know, her work's published in many magazines all over the world. So I had a moment to chat with her briefly when she got here. Wonderful lady, and I believe wholeheartedly 110% what she does. So let's give her a big hand, big applause, even online there. Give her a big applause to Miss Jennifer Warner.
All right, can you guys hear me? Yeah, okay. Let me get this started here. There we go. Awesome. Great. Well, thank you for that wonderful introduction. I am completely honored to be here, and I have to say I've been doing a lot of online presentations. This is my first hybrid and my first time speaking in person in almost 2 years. So it's really, really nice to be back in front of actual human beings. But this is Secrets Behind the Lens, Photographing Wildlife and Landscapes Around the World. So as you said, I'm Jennifer Lee Warner. I founded a company called Experience Wildlife about 15 years ago and have been photographing full-time since. Like you said, chair of the ethics committee for the North American Nature Photographers Association. We also call it NAMPA, if you ever hear that. That is the shortened version because that is a mouthful. And been photographing all over the world. So all over North America, including Africa, Asia, Australia, South America, and I do lead photo tours, both in person and online. So I guess we'll start from the beginning. So everybody always asks, how did I get started? I always wanted to be a wildlife photographer. I was in love with wildlife from an early age, particularly big cats, large predators, and I started watching National Geographic when I was about maybe 7 or 8 years old and knew that was it. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be the person who took those pictures, and that's what I continued to want to do the rest of my life. So I did study photography and communications at Washington State University. And in 2005, when I graduated, I started working for the wildlife photographer, Tom Mingleson. He has galleries all over the country, and I actually worked at one of his galleries. And this is where I started to understand the business of wildlife photography. In 2006, I went to my very first photography workshop, and this is where I learned how to take pictures of animals and landscapes. And Tom was one of the instructors, along with many other National Geographic and conservation photographers, and I really got a great in-depth look at what it would be like to be a wildlife photographer, a landscape photographer working in the field. And this workshop that took place in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, I ended up going 5 times because I liked it so much, and they eventually did ask me to be on their staff for a season as well. They knew they were just not getting rid of me, so they might as well hire me as well. So in the early days, I wanted to just get my work in front of as many eyes as I could. So I did coffee shops and wine galleries and art walks and farmers markets. I did street festivals, and I was published in a few book projects. I did art showcases and public art displays, galleries. Some of the artists like Wyland, if you're familiar with his work, let me show my work in his gallery in Laguna Beach. Also participated in co-ops and convention centers and the raw artist showcases that are all over the country. I did about 5 of those showcases, and I just wanted to see if I could get my work in front of as many eyes as possible. I also started to get a little recognition as I started to do that. So photo contests and blogs, National Geographic, World Wildlife Federation, and an exhibit for the Climate Change Summit from National Geographic, and getting published in places like the New Yorker, Outdoor Photographer magazine, Audubon, even a feature about me in the San Diego Voyager, and as well as photo competitions and blogs and articles and newsletters from conservation organizations. And in those early years when I was starting out, I just traveled and tried to get as many portfolio images as I could. So places that I wanted to go, like Africa, Alaska, and going to places like Australia to get unique wildlife like this kangaroo. Even dabbled in underwater photography and trying to photograph animals like the sea turtle in Hawaii, focusing on landscapes like this one in Wyoming, bird species, and marine animals as well. And making connections was really, really vital to getting started. So connecting with not just photographers, but people who are influential, like Jane Goodall, a world famous primatologist and wildlife, like my mouse is on there. There you go. I don't know why I have a little cursor here, but it doesn't want to feel like the cursor is like right there. There we go. Like just right on her nose. But Melissa Grew, who is a very famous bird photographer, and Jody Cobb, the first female photographer for National Geographic, the CEO and founder of the Cheetah Conservation Fund, and local biologists and zoologists, and connecting with them, Amy Vitale from National Geographic, and these amazing women who are part of the ILCP, the International League of Conservation Photographers. And making those connections are the absolute key to success when you're doing something like this. And joining organizations that shared my values, like Nikon and Professional Photographers of America, North American Nature Photographers Association, and many nonprofits that had messages that I wanted to share. But as many wildlife photographers, or most photographers, I did have a day job for about a decade. And I did work for a company called LifeTouch. Some of you might be familiar with it. Some of you may have even worked for that company. And I did pictures like this. So definitely out of that realm, but it did teach me a lot about how to think like a business owner, not just an artist, but you have to think about how you're going to make income and how you're going to support yourself. So taking pictures like these really shaped me as an artist. And this is where I did join PPA, went to many Imaging USA, and got to know people from that organization as well. And even got my first merit image back in 2017. But in 2017, that same year, I did decide that it was time to quit the day job, take the leap, and become a full-time conservation photographer. So I did leave that comfort of that steady paycheck and took the leap because I knew I needed to spend as much time in the field as I could possibly do. And I have to say, for anyone who wants to do that, make sure you have a support system, because there's a lot of times where you don't have steady income when you are working as a freelancer. So you want to make sure you have that support system. And I was very lucky to have a husband who not only financially supported me, but also supported me doing what I was passionate about and making sure that I was fulfilling my life dream. So I was spending more time following migrations and scouting out locations so that I could do in-person photo tours and share what I was doing with other people and take them out into the field. And it was about this time that I really decided I needed to niche down and go from just a wildlife photographer into a conservation photographer. And there is a difference between a wildlife photographer and a conservation photographer. And I do consider myself a conservation photographer. This is the actual definition that you would find online, which is that conservation photography is the active use of photographic process. And what it really means is that it's not so much about how you're taking the picture, it's about what you're doing with the pictures when you're done with them. So taking pictures and using them to support conservation efforts throughout the world. And there is a photographer from National Geographic, Jill Satori, who said it best. So a wildlife photographer is going to take a picture of a butterfly on a flower, and a conservation photographer is going to take a picture of that same butterfly with a bulldozer in the background. So really understanding our impact on wildlife and using those photos to help show what's going on and how to change hearts and minds. Something I noticed when I was out in the field and spending a lot of time with other photographers is that I was maybe not like a lot of the other wildlife photographers. If you notice, this is my group I was with in India. I'm the only woman. And that was very common to be out with all men. So when I started to become more established, I wanted to be able to encourage other women to enter the career in conservation photography. So I did join an organization. It is all volunteer because it is something I'm passionate about, and there's an organization called Girls Who Click, and that is encouraging teenage girls to enter a career in conservation photography by offering them free workshops. So in the early days, we were doing these in person. So did in-person workshops with local teen girls, and then as COVID hit, like many other things, we converted those to online workshops. The other thing that we were able to do when we did make that transformation was to start an ambassador program. So selecting very highly motivated teen girls and even girls in their early 20s who were very interested in entering and one-on-one mentoring. So I did do a little one-on-one mentoring in person as well as online. This is my official mentee. The other girl is a different person's mentee. I managed to kind of adopt as well because she's more local to me. But Ashwara is from India. She just won Wildlife Photographer of the Year. She has her own National Geographic special, and she was just recently accepted into the ILCP. I think I did my job. She's good to go now. She's quite an impressive young lady. I think when we're done, she'll now mentor me. But it was nice to be able to connect with somebody completely on the other side of the world and with the power of Zoom. So it's been fantastic. So these are our ambassadors. They're all over the world. We have some in Africa, India, here in North America, and there are a group of us that are mentoring these individual girls, and they are quite an impressive set of young ladies. I also started the Southern California chapter of the Women for Wildlife. This is not just storytellers, but also biologists, anyone working in the conservation field and connecting women who are in those fields as well. And then, as I said, I joined the North American Nature Photographers Association as their ethics committee, and that ethics committee chair. And that is something that I'm extremely passionate about, is making sure that we are being ethical when we're out in the field. So in that organization, we are gathering and disseminating, promoting information involving nature photography, and that involves access to public lands, environmental, ethical field practices, truth in captioning statements, and including a document on photographing in game farms. And I'll get a little more into that towards the end of the presentation. But if you're interested in looking at those individual documents and what they say, you can find them on our website at nampa.org. And we're currently in the process of developing a very comprehensive ethics handbook that involves everything that there is to do about ethics, all in one handbook. So being part of that organization, it gave me a lot of exposure as well. Blog articles that I wrote, webinars that I've presented for them, articles on their website, articles in their publications as well, all on ethics. And I'm also leading tours for them, which I will be leading one here in a few weeks in Wyoming, in one of my very favorite places in Grand Tetons. But conservation projects has really been the passion and focus of what I do. And my very first one actually was in 2007. So very early on, I was collaborating on this book called The Wild Within. It's about the Washington State Arboretum, largest wetlands in the Seattle area. And they were planning to put a highway through. So we were documenting all of the species and the impacts that that would have on having such a major highway running through that wetlands. The first project that I did all on my own was at the Cheetah Conservation Fund out of Namibia. And again, focusing on women in conservation. This is obviously a very important topic to me, the inclusion of women. And one of the things that's fascinating about the Cheetah Conservation Fund is that most of their organization is run by women, and women from all over the world too. So I did travel to Africa to do this project, spent time in Namibia living in the field center to get these pictures. So a little bit about what they do. Cheetahs are the most endangered big cat in Africa. There's only 9% of them left in their historical range, with about 7,100 left in the wild currently, and they are listed as an endangered species. Their primary things that are causing this is habitat loss, human-wildlife conflicts, and the illegal wildlife trade. And so CCF, Cheetah Conservation Fund, does a lot to help mitigate some of these problems, including having a model farm. They create predator-friendly livestock training programs, and those are all things that I'm helping document for them for outreach, education, and raising funds. So their livestock guarding dog program, these are Anatoly Shepherds. These are dogs that are bred specifically to live with livestock, and they will defend those livestock to the death. They consider those animals as part of their pack. And so just their sheer presence keeps predators away. They're a very large dog. They also do a breeding program there, and I was very honored to be able to see not only a live birth, but a C-section while I was there. It was my first operation I ever had to be in on, and it was this dog here, and she had these puppies. They raise these dogs and then give them to farmers to protect their livestock. Bush Block is another program that they have. This is where they are going through and taking invasive plants out of the ecosystem and then turning them into these bricks that they sell for fire burning for the local community. Scat detection dogs as well. These are highly trained dogs that are looking for essentially poop or black gold. And that tells them a lot about what is going on with these animals. They take them to these genetic labs that they have right there on the site, and they're able to see what are the animals eating, who are these individuals, what is the genetic diversity of these individuals, and that tells them a lot about the species. They also have ecology teams that are doing camera trap studies. It allows them to see what type of animals are coming into specific areas. They have a veterinary team on staff, and not only are they treating the cheetahs and the dogs, but also other wildlife. This is an African painted dog that had broken its leg, and they were giving him surgery. And then the illegal pet trade, which is one of the leading causes to the cheetah decline. People will take these cubs out of the wild. They make terrible pets. They don't live more than about a year when they are done, when people take them as pets. And then if the lucky ones end up at the center, they can't be released back in the wild because they never learned the skills to hunt. So this is my favorite cheetah, Dominic, and I was lucky enough to, he's only 7 months old at this time, and I was able to spend some real quality time photographing him. But he will live as an ambassador at the center for tourism to come through and learn about why it's important to leave these cheetahs with their mothers. So like I said, tourism is another part of this organization. I lead tours there as well, and this allows people to actually come and see the cheetahs in person, learn about them and the struggles that they have. This is a way for them to raise funds to keep the center open. It's a beautiful lodge that they've built there, and we're able to go out. They have what they call the Little Serengeti. We are able to see the local wildlife that lives right there, just outside of the field center. So these are some of the images they've used for marketing. This one's in Italian because they have organizations all over the world supporting them. So newsletters and websites and all of their information that they do, blog posts. This is in Wild Planet Photo Magazine, a story that I wrote about International Cheetah Day that is on December 4th. So another program that I have developed is called the Marine Disturbance Initiative. This is out of La Jolla, and it is focusing on marine mammals. So if any one of you are familiar with La Jolla, it's a very special location, one of the only inland rookeries for both harbor seals and California sea lions, and one of the only places you can actually see live seal births. Unfortunately, because it is so close to such high tourism area, people have approached them, and that does cause seal and sea lion abandonment. So I worked with these organizations, variety of them, who petitioned to the California Coastal Commission to close the beach for 5 months a year to allow for pupping season. These organizations that count the seals, they monitor it, and they have a rope that prevents people from going down there. So this is an actual seal birth that I was able to photograph. Luckily, there is, this is another mom and pup. So with the harbor seals, they have about 6 weeks where they're spending with their pup. They don't even go out and fish at that time. They just nurse their pup and then wean them after about 6 weeks. So that time is really critical. We do have the seawall, which is great because you can actually watch the births. You can watch the moms playing. Outside of somewhere like SeaWorld, this is the only time you're ever going to see this interaction in the wild. So it's really important that no one's going down to the beach and disturbing them. So this is also an area where there's California sea lions. And unlike the harbor seals, they spend about 8 months with their pups, but they will go out to sea and fish during that time and leave the pups on the shore all by themselves. So documented people who were approaching these. Unlike the harbor seals, there is no beach closure. People can go down and touch them. They shouldn't. It's illegal, but they do. even as much as petting them when the moms are away. So my big project was documenting this behavior, showing government officials what is happening and the resulting of it. They do spend a lot of time in the water there, but they also do need to come out of the water to thermoregulate. And when people are standing on these rocks that they do that, they can't come out of the water, and they do have a hard time getting enough rest and thermoregulation. So it's really important that they're getting their space. Another thing that's happening also in that area is fishing line and debris. And as you can see here, this is actually a success story. This is Roxy. She was rescued as a pup with fishing line around her waist. SeaWorld came and they took her, rehabilitated her, and released her. She's had a pup every single year since she's been out, but she will have the scar. So she is a direct result of what happens when fishing line is there. But as you can see, SeaWorld does come and rescue any of the pups that are being abandoned or have any other issues like fishing line, human disturbance. They do their best to educate the public on why they're taking the pups away. They do rehabilitate not just SeaWorld Rescue, but also Pacific Marine Mammal Center, which is where this organization is right here, and then release them back into the wild whenever they can. So documenting that. So I did film this, this release just a few weeks ago, and I'm going to, let's see, show you the video, but it doesn't want to play. So let's see. Give me 1 second. Should sound. Hopefully this works. So just a kind of fun thing to see them going back into the ocean. And, oh, did I share? Sorry. So once they're released, most will either go back to the Channel Islands or La Jolla, because they will go back to where they were born. So that's why it's so critical that we are preserving those specific areas like La Jolla. They are tagged so you can see which individuals were rescued, and they do shave them as well, just so they can make sure that they're monitoring whoever was rescued and being rehabilitated. So recently, with the efforts of some of the pictures that I've been taking, they've been putting out more signs, raising more awareness. And after an unfortunate incident a couple months ago where a sea lion was actually killed after being approached so much it was pushed up against some rocks, they've now actually put a wildlife officer out to prevent people. So these awarenesses, these pictures, showing it to the public does make an impact, and that is how you make change. Another project that I'm really passionate about that I've been working on is called Room to Roam. It has to do with the grizzly bears of the greater Yellowstone area. These are unique bears as they are a different subspecies than the ones you'd see in like Alaska, and they are considered an endangered species. So with high tourism, you have a lot of people who are wanting to see these bears. These sows, this is Grizzly 399. If you're familiar with any of the bears in the greater Yellowstone area, they do tag them because they are endangered species, and these sows do tend to stay by the roads on purpose. They, when they have cubs, they will stay away from the forest because that's where the males are, who will try to kill the cubs so that they can mate with the female again. And they do find that the tourism actually benefits them. So we do have wildlife officers that help protect the people from getting too close to the bears, as they do tend to walk back and forth across the busy roads. Unfortunately, when the bears leave the protection of the parks, they no longer have wildlife officers, and the bears don't know the difference between a national park and a forest or a highway. And you get something like this, where you've got people who are getting as close as possible to bears, which is not a very safe thing. You have signs, and they do have to stay at least 100 yards away. You get road signs trying to indicate, but what people think is this is natural, this is what you expect to see when you see bears. You're actually really seeing more of this. Lots and lots of people craning to get a view of these bears crossing the road. So this is Felicia. She's kind of the ambassador of this program, or this project I'm working on. And unfortunately for Felicia, she loves to stay by the busy highway that is just outside of the national park. And she has 2 small cubs, and the wildlife officers petitioned to put her down, even though she's an endangered species, because she was causing traffic jams on the highway. So photographers from all over petitioned to make that not happen, and with an agreement that they would stay away from the highway. Luckily, Felicia is still around. They've just hazed her a little way from the road, trying to get her to stay off the highway so she is not a danger. But she is still alive because people cared enough to petition to keep her that way. And sometimes the bears help too, managing traffic whenever possible. He's cute, isn't he? Something else I'm always documenting is any behavior that is happening with people and wildlife. This is a fox who's been habituated. This is a park ranger picking up trash, and the fox was so comfortable with people, it was just approaching her. You can see she's not very happy with that. Also, people in public areas of national parks where they're not paying any attention, and documenting that just to raise awareness in presentations, as well as issues with wildlife who are approaching cars to lick the vehicles, which causes disease transmission. Just like us with coronavirus, we don't want all of the animals licking the same things. It does cause disease transmission. So raising awareness. Yes. They like the salt that's on the cars that's coming up from the roads. Yeah, so one bighorn sheep licking a vehicle doesn't really hurt it. But if it licks the vehicle and another one licks the vehicle, then it's like they're licking each other. So I recently relocated from California to Texas and immediately became involved in this preserve. I'm a volunteer photographer, but it does give me unlimited access to private areas that is off limits to the public. It's one way that I get access for photo stories. So the Balcones Canyonland Preserve, it's 32,000 acres. It's one of the largest preserves in the country, and it does house multiple endangered species. So things that I'm working on for them is just documenting their preserves, not just the endangered species, but all the species that are benefiting from this preservation because of the endangered species that are there. So like whiptails, these rock squirrels, different insects. Also, not only animals, but things like mushrooms, these caves that are there, different insects like dragonflies and grasshoppers. And then the project of meeting my own neighbors. So when I moved, I wanted to explore all of the new wildlife that was in my new ecosystem. So this is a very easy project that anyone can do, just documenting the animals that are within your backyard or around your area. These are cliff swallows that were under the highway by my house. This is a cicada. Now, I don't condone bringing wild animals into your house, but he's dead. I found him after he died naturally, and he was on my sidewalk, so I thought this is a great way to actually do a studio setting and get some really high definition pictures of the details of the cicada. Sunflowers and the bees that are there. This Mediterranean gecko comes to my house every night, and I spend every night looking for them. Sometimes there's one, sometimes there's multiple ones. So getting creative angles there with that. We've also have lots of snakes in Texas. This one's a pretty harmless water snake, but he was very curious as I was walking by. We also have a migratory path in central Texas. So the monarch butterflies do fly there and through there in the spring, as well as lots of migratory birds like these cedar waxwings, and then our locals like our deer. And then flowers that are unique to our area, the red poppies in Georgetown, where I live, and the bluebells that people come from all over to photograph. And also fossils. So this is 1 mile from my house. These are actual dinosaur tracks that are cemented into the limestone, and are just no park, no sign, just dinosaur tracks along the riverbank. All right, so switching to technical. I am a Nikon professional, so Nikon is my sponsor, but I did transition from Canon, so I do have Nikon and Canon in my bag. I always carry 2 bodies with me anytime I'm out photographing, usually one with a long lens and one with a short. I recently picked up the Z50, which I like to do for more photojournalism. It's a little less obvious that I'm out taking a lot of pictures, so it allows me to be a little more under the radar when I'm doing particularly pictures of people not behaving the way that they should. And then I do tend to use my older Canon equipment for my underwater housing, because I don't like to put my brand new Nikon in my underwater case whenever I can avoid it, as well as I use it for my landscape sometimes. I also like to do some camera trapping. DSLR camera trapping is kind of a newer conservation tool. So you can get this case, put your actual DSLR, be willing to leave it out into the woods. So you got to make sure that you're okay with that being damaged or stolen. Private lands, that's why connecting with private property like the Balcones Canyonlands Preserve is a great place for me to be able to set up. This is in Panama though. And then trail cameras, something that I like to use. So this, I'm hoping this is gonna stream. Oh, it's being so laggy. This is a watering hole in Namibia. Having a trail camera allows you to really be able to see what's happening when you're not around. It's a great tool. Get one for about 40 bucks. And you can see the animals that are coming and going from any given area. Sorry, the video is just a little laggy compared to what it should be. You're going to see different animals at night than you do in the day. So these are oryx. Again, Africa. And any good trail camera will have night vision. A lot of times you can set up a DSLR camera trap and a trail camera so you can see if your camera is actually getting what you want, because a camera trap, they're going to go through a sensor. Some animals are smart enough to go around the sensor. So you can use the trail camera to see what is the behavior that's happening. I also do set them up near my house. There's some deer that are just walking along the river right by my house. Again, nighttime is going to give you a different species. So coyotes that typically will come out more at night because they're trying to avoid people. And then you might get some natural events. So this video, same location where the deer and the coyote were coming by. I'd like you to point out the time stamp on here at 12:59 p.m. It started to rain really hard. Sorry, the video's a little laggy. Big lightning storm. Within 45 minutes, the water has risen pretty severely. The water's moving. You can see debris that's coming. And then a few minutes later, so this is a flash flood. And if you had been standing out there, you probably wouldn't be around today, I'm guessing. So it's a good warning. And that's something you can get with a trail camera without putting yourself into danger. Fortunately, this is the last video I got on this trail camera before it died, but I at least got the gift of the memory card who survived the flash flood. So a couple tips. So for photographing in nature, lighting is always important. Any photography, I'm sure you know that. So a couple different lighting things. Diffuse lighting is like a big softbox over the sky. It's going to give you nice, even lighting that's, you know, cloud coverage, shade. Side lighting, when you're in that bright sun, is going to give you more dramatic lighting for your portrait. Front lighting is usually what you're optimally trying to achieve. So putting your back to the sun and letting the sun light your subject evenly. I love photographing backlight. When you're doing backlighting, it's going to get more silhouette. So you're able to do a little more creative type of picture. You can also bring animals into a studio when it is a safe environment. This is an ambassador cheetah from the San Diego Zoo. One of my collaborators for a project was able to photograph this baby cheetah in a studio setting. And then you're making sure you're catching those catch lights in the eyes. You can see I've got 2 lights, a main and a fill. Angle, really important as well. This is a barn, it's very popular in Wyoming. You can see there's this little ground squirrel in the bottom of the frame. It's not a very interesting picture, but you change your angle, you get down on the ground like this. Now, I will say I laid down and the squirrel approached me, not the other way around. They're very curious. And now you can get something a lot more dramatic by getting eye level with your subject. Changing your depth of field is going to change the picture dramatically, and instead of being about the barn, now you're really focusing on those squirrels. You can also change your angle by getting way above it. Now this is from a hot air balloon in Africa, and something you're going to see from a hot air balloon that you're not going to see from the ground is that game trail. So now you've got a very different perspective. Rule of thirds. This is the same with portraiture, dividing up your picture into 9 quadrants and trying to place the main subject in the intersect. Also goes for verticals versus horizontals. Now, and then the giraffe's so tall, putting just the head in that intersect. And then for landscapes, you're going to try to put the most interesting portion of the picture in 2/3, with the remaining in the top third. So in this case, flowers. If the sky was really dramatic and the foreground was not that interesting, I would flip that and put more of the sky, but you don't want to center your landscape. So ethics is what I usually present on and is what is really important. As you can see with most of my projects, it's what I talk about a lot, having to do with what you're doing in the field and what you're doing afterwards, and making sure that you are putting your subjects ahead of your photographs at all times. So I do believe that every photographer should have respect for the wildlife and their environment. In any situation, the well-being of the animal or their environment has to come before your photograph. Even if it means you don't take the picture, you have to put their best interest first. So a couple tips for this is learning animal behavior. So know what you're going to be photographing before you go into any environment to the best of your knowledge and making sure you understand what those life cycles are. So for an example, this comic strip I found was a prime example of how a photographer can impact wildlife. So this story is talking about this guy who won this great photo contest because he was using bird calls all day long to call in this bird. While meanwhile at the nest, the mother is sitting with these chicks not getting food because the male's too busy, you know, following the photographer around. You want to make sure you're not stressing wildlife or their habitats, which means making sure that you're not purposely trying to get birds to flush, to make them fly. It takes a lot of energy when birds fly, so making sure you're not purposely doing it. Everybody does it. I do it on accident sometimes. You see a bird and you get too close and it will fly, but making sure you understand what that looks like and then backing up and not doing it again. Using appropriate lenses. So if you are photographing wildlife, try to use as long a lens as possible. If you're seeing animals and they are very clearly reacting to you, like this deer, this tail up, the head up, that is an indicator that it's alarmed. So if you see something like this, know what to look for and then know when that you're too close. Sometimes if you just stop for a while, it'll go back to its natural behavior. This guy I found him in the field, and although it is a little overkill, I'll admit, I was like, wow, he's very dedicated. He is doing everything that I would like people to do. He is camouflaging himself. He's using a long lens. He's being very considerate to the wildlife he's trying to photograph. Don't expect people to do this that far, though. And just understand the ecosystem as well. So if you're traipsing through a bunch of flowers to get your landscape, you're probably damaging those flowers as you're walking through. So just making sure that if you see signs that are saying that you need to stay on trail, that you are following those, as well as snakes. Don't step on snakes. As you can see, wildlife follows those signs too. So be like the deer. So this is a great example. So several years ago, we had the super bloom in California. These are California poppies. This is usually about every 10 years. We had one a little bit closer together over the last few years. So many people came to see the California poppies that they actually had to close down this entire preserve because people were damaging it. One person even flew a helicopter into the middle of the field. People were laying down in the flowers and stepping on them. They were even picking the flowers, which causes them not to regerminate, which means they won't grow again. So if you do that, you step on the flowers, you pick them, it means we won't have super blooms anymore. They are a very delicate flower, and they don't survive after being picked for very long anyway. Same thing goes with carving into trees. When you carve into trees, it's like cutting into someone's skin. It can permanently damage them and cause them to even starve to death if they can't get enough water because of the damage from the carving. Also paying attention to closed signs. If you see that an area is closed to the public, that means you, unless you have special permission. So don't enter areas that are closed. Looking for signs that are indicating that you shouldn't be getting too close to wildlife or that pets shouldn't be on the trail. I did encounter an individual who had his 2 small dogs on a leash in an area that said no pets, and there was a bear. He was about 5 feet from the bear, and those dogs were shaking like a leaf, and it was torture. So I did tell that guy he needed to leave because I was very afraid for those dogs. This goes for marine mammals as well. The marine mammals like California sea lions and harbor seals are protected by the Marine Mammal Protection Act, which means you can't go more than 50 feet to the marine mammals. It is illegal. This is a Hawaiian monk seal. This is the most endangered seal in the world. They do need to come onto the shore to rest. So when you do approach them, if you see that they're raising their head and they're looking at you, it does mean you are harassing them. Even if you're not photographing, you're just walking, When you see animals and they are reacting to you, like these Egyptian geese with these young, it's a very clear indication that they're stressed. You don't want to be like this guy who's just continued to walk past them because he ended up getting bit right in the butt. So you got to watch for that behavior. And if they're reacting to you, be sensitive and walk around. Anytime you're in natural areas, you want to be acting like a guest in their home. So petting wildlife, approaching wildlife, feeding wildlife is not recommended. If you do see other people exhibiting this behavior, you should be finding law enforcement or ranger. You can tactfully inform them that what they're doing is wrong, but I don't recommend getting into fights with people, and a lot of people will get very defensive if you tell them what not to do. There are safe distance rules in most natural areas. It's typically 100 feet from a bear or wolf, usually 25 yards from a moose or bison or anything like that. So make sure that you are staying within those areas. And then if you are seeing an animal and you want to pull off, that you're pulling completely off the side of the road. I oftentimes see people stop in the middle of a highway and jump out of their car and leave their car in the middle of the highway while they're photographing, and that is just a dangerous situation. If the animals are walking into the road, you should just let them cross the road. You shouldn't honk or try to force them to move, because that will make them scatter and it's far more dangerous. And then absolutely never feeding wild animals, particularly when it comes to predatory animals. This also goes for marine mammals, whales, things like that. They also have safe distance rules and indicators that you shouldn't be doing, like feeding, swimming with whales, trapping them, trying to get them to move. So you can see there's safe distance rules depending on the species of whales as well. And then my friends at the Sea Otter Savvy came up with this beautiful graphic that is showing you what a sea otter would look like when it is alarmed. When they're not behaving naturally, they're not getting all of the food and nutrients and rest that they need. So when you are approaching them too closely, they're stopping what they're doing and they're paying attention to you, which is not what you want them to do. The same with seals and sea lions. You want them to be resting when it's time for them to be resting. So like I said, feeding wildlife is definitely something you don't want to do. I showed you this picture earlier. This is a fox that had been habituated. He was staying near the side of the road. I sat with him for a long time and I watched every time someone pulled over, he ran straight to their car and sat down. So clearly people had been feeding it. Now, I never saw what happened at the end. I watched it until it did eventually wander off. But like so many animals that are like this, they do end up getting hit by cars. So this is why we don't feed wild animals. We don't want them habituated towards roads. So interacting with wildlife only when they want to interact, it means you're going to get better photographs. So ultimately, as a photographer, when they look more natural and relaxed is when you're going to get those award-winning photos. A great way to do this by wanting to get close is using photography blinds, something that I use regularly. There's lots of types of blinds. These ones are wood structures that are permanently put into preserves and areas to photograph. They're also areas that you can stay a little warmer, even though this photographer looks like she's freezing out there. This is Nebraska in the spring. You can also use the pop-up blinds. This is along the Platte River for the sandhill crane migration. Pop-up blinds are great because you can move them wherever you want. They're a little less comfortable, but they are great for being portable. Couple things to note when you are using photography blinds: you don't want to make a lot of noise, flash, talking. All the animals hear you when you're in there, so that's not really a blind if you are making a lot of noise or making a lot of flashes. I use my vehicle as a blind a lot of the time, and this is a great way to be able to approach wildlife without them really noticing that you're there. They're used to cars going by and stopping, so this is in Africa, but you can do this with your sunroof or just rolling down your window and sitting and waiting. When you are on foot, though, you do want to be aware of your surroundings. A moose following photographers back to their car is funny, but definitely not safe. You do want to make sure that you are continually looking behind you as well as what's in front of you, because an animal like a moose is going to sneak up on you very quickly. And then think about, is the animal thinking you're a predator or are you prey? And how they're going to react to you is going to really depend on what you should be doing. So if you are trying to approach an animal that does see you as a predator, which most of them will, wearing clothes that blend into the environment, dark clothes, they don't make a lot of noise when you walk, it's going to help. Getting low, again, only for animals that see you as a predator. If they see you as a prey, don't get low, like bears. I wouldn't recommend that. Walk at an angle and avoid eye contact. Oftentimes, animals think you can't see them if you aren't looking at them, and they will just stay still in order to try to avoid detection. And then be quiet. I often am photographing in the woods, and I hear just people coming by, and they're making a lot of noise. If I can hear you, so can all the animals around, and they're just going to avoid you. And then most importantly, never block an animal's escape route. So there's a pretty well-known story about a moose that was crossing a river. A group of photographers stood at the edge of the river to photograph it crossing. The moose got startled by the people. It turned around and then ended up drowning because it couldn't make it back. So you want to make sure that you're giving the moose or any other animal a way for it to move in and out of its environment without blocking it. If the animal does get stressed, you want to make sure that you are just leaving. You should never press an issue. Don't chase it. If an animal does try to leave, don't follow it. Let it leave. Just like if you were photographing a person and they said that they wanted to stop, wanted you to stop photographing them, you would stop. So same thing with an animal. You should respect their right to decline a photo session. And just remember that the best pictures come when the animal feels comfortable enough for you to build up that trust. So this is a perfect example of sitting and waiting and developing enough trust that they're just going to go about doing what they were doing before you got there. So photographing captive animals. So a lot of people choose to photograph captive animals over photographing wild animals because it is easier. There's a lot of reasons why you might do this. So there are domesticated animals and non-domesticated animals. For the purpose of this presentation, I'm talking about non-domesticated animals. So there is a little bit difference there between a goat and a koala. But you might photograph an animal that is incredibly hard to find. So something like a giant panda, much easier to photograph in captivity. Or an extremely endangered species that there's only a few left in the world and you'd have to photograph it in a zoo in order to document it. An aquarium where animals like these jellyfish would be very difficult to photograph in the wild. You might photograph animals that are in the middle of rehabilitation, like this painted dog in Africa, or animals that could not be released back into the wild. You might even be photographing ambassador animals that are at events. So lots of reasons why you'd photograph captive animals, but not all captive animals are in the same situation, and you should be picking locations that are being ethical. So a couple things to think about. AZA, it's not the only thing to think about, but it's a really good indicator. So Association of Zoos and Aquariums has very rigorous standards, and only facilities that meet these standards get the AZA accreditation. So they're looking for things like animal welfare, veterinary care, conservation, education, scientific advancement, governing authority, how they treat their staff, support organization, how they have their finances. So if they're being run into the ground, they don't get that. Physical facilities, safety and security, guest services, strategic planning, all of those things have to meet these rigorous standards in order to get AZA accreditation. So if you see that, AZA label on any facility, you know that they're probably doing a pretty good job. Ask yourself, maybe they don't have AZA accreditation. A lot of rescues can't because of certain situations. So ask yourself, does the facility have a conservation or educational purpose? Is the facility offering human-wildlife interaction, and is that being done in a safe manner for both the animal and the person? Where do the animals come from? You know, is the animals being born in the facility? And if they are they part of the species survival plan? You know, maybe they are helping these species stay around because there's so few of them. Were they captured from the wild? So are these facilities taking animals to the wild just for their facility, or are being brought in from other facilities? So these are just questions you can start asking before you choose to photograph at a location. And then think about what happens to animals when they're no longer a use. So if you're photographing at, say, a game farm, and they are trying to encourage photographers to come in and film them, and now the animal is older, they're no longer pretty, are they putting them out to pasture because they're no longer useful? Maybe that's not a facility you want to support. And then truth in captioning. So how we caption our pictures, whether they're in publications or even social media, also has ethical ramifications. So you want to make sure that you're educating your photo viewers on what they're seeing, whether this is wildlife photography or people photography. You should be educating your photo viewers and maintaining public trust. So if you're creating something that's extremely artistic, that you're being truthful about it. You know, if you were merging images together, that you're letting the audience know how you created it, so they're not thinking that it's appearing in nature when it's not, and helping other photographers understand how you made the image. So a couple elements to think about: the what, the when and the where, and the how. So for example, the how has two parts. That's the truthful disclosure of conditions under which it was captured. So most nature images, the photo viewer assumes that it's natural. So if you are doing something that is not, that you are being truthful about it. So examples of how you would caption. So if the animal is coming from the wild, it's not in a facility, it's just taken out of nature, it would be considered wild. If it's in a private facility, that would be a captive. If it's an animal that's wild but in a controlled situation, such as these baby birds that had fallen out of the nest and someone had scooped them up to take them to a rescue facility, this is a controlled environment. They are a wild animal, but that is not natural. Baited, so if you are using food or scents to bring an animal in, it should be labeled as such. So in this case, this crocodile had been fed bones from the lodge that I was at. I didn't bait it. I don't believe in baiting, but this animal was baited, so I wouldn't post this picture without explaining why this crocodile is so close. Lured. So lured is different than baiting. Lured is usually a non-food. It can be, or non-meat typically, when it's, so like bird feeders would be a lured situation. You can also use other things to lure an animal, like water. And so lured doesn't always mean bad. If you are putting out water to make sure animals are hydrated and an animal does come in, but that is a situation you created. So those would be the part A of the how. Other things you can think about when you are captioning images would be like, if you are in an area that's off limits to the public, like I said earlier, when I volunteer for the Balcones Canyon Land Preserve, explaining in any photograph that I had special permission to be there. That way people don't just show up and expect that they can come in. If you are working with a biologist, explaining that you're doing this with special permission, again, so people understand in your photos that what you're doing does have guidance and supervision. And that if you are using remote cameras, like I was saying with trail cameras or DSLR camera traps, you're explaining that that is how you got the image. So if you have a wide angle picture of a snow leopard, they know that you weren't just standing there in front of the snow leopard with a wide angle lens, that this was done with a camera trap. So a great example is if I was going to post this picture on social media, I would say that this is a cheetah that is part of a conservation event for the Cheetah Conservation Fund this animal came from the San Diego Zoo. It's an ambassador animal that was born there. I had special permission to photograph it, and that it was under control by the experts at the San Diego Zoo. So anyone who sees this picture, they completely understand what's going on here. So the second part of the how would be the post-processing. So once you have the picture, what kind of digital modifications are you making to that photograph? So we recommend as shot, cleanup, manipulated, composite, multiple exposures, and effects to be your labels. And my examples here would be, this is as shot. I did nothing to the photograph other than some minor adjustments, maybe to exposure or maybe lighting some shadows. That's still considered as shot. This would be considered a touch-up. As you can see here, there's this one tiny blade of grass that went through the beak. In my opinion, as an artist, that was distracting to me. By just taking a little bit of a dust removal tool and removing that, it didn't alter really what I'm seeing as a natural history picture, but I am admitting that I changed something in the photograph. Now this deer, when I found him, was missing an eye. I don't know why he was missing an eye, but he was missing an eye. I was able to take the other eye, clone it, and flip it, but now this is considered a manipulation. So I wouldn't do this without admitting that I manipulated the photograph. This would be a multiple exposures. I took several different frames and I stitched them all together in order to create this very wide angle of this rainbow. I wanted to see the whole thing. And the only way I could do that with the camera tools that I had would be to stitch it together. So admitting that it is all one image, but that I stitched it together from multiple frames. Another great example would be this one where I'm doing star trails. So in this case, I took 30 different exposures, all at 2 minutes apiece over the course of an hour, and stitched them all together to get those star trails. And this would be an example of a composite. This is a lunar eclipse that I photographed over 6 hours. It's all done in one location, but I took the picture of the moon every 30 minutes and then put it back into the original scene that I saw so you could see as the lunar eclipse changed. But clearly there's only one moon in the sky, so this would be a composite. And then lastly, effects. There are millions of effects that you could do to a picture. In this case, I just used the painting tool in Photoshop. But again, this is not a natural appearing picture, so admitting that I used some effect to create it. So a couple things before I go into questions. I do run a free online community for photographers. In there are free events, paid events, social gatherings. People can ask questions, connect with people who are interested in photography. So if you are interested in joining the community, I welcome you to join experiencewildlifeworkshops.com. Like I said, it's free to join, and then you can buy a la carte workshops on different topics. And I am doing in-field workshops again starting next year, and I have 4 different workshops that I'm leading. The first being in Ecuador, as well as the Galapagos Islands in May. The next one will be in June in Namibia. We will visit the Cheetah Conservation Fund Field Center, but also tour around Namibia. In July, we'll be heading to Alaska, primarily photographing bears, but also whales and otters and birds. And then wrapping up my year in December in Florida, focusing on the wild areas, particularly along the Gulf and in the Everglades of the manatees and burrowing owls, birds that all live around that area. So if you're interested in those tours, those are listed on my website, but I also have, for anyone who's in person, I do have some brochures. But if you are joining on Zoom, you can visit my website, experiencewildlife.com, to see those tours. And that's my social media. So before I do questions, if you did fill out a little slip, I'm going to do a raffle for a couple free things. Yep, ooh, perfect. So if you are joining on Zoom, what I would recommend, we can either have them add their names into the chat, maybe, and then I can do pick a random name, and they can win one of the prizes, maybe? Let's do that. So if you want to participate, and I'll do a separate prize for all of the people joining online, just add your name and email address into the chat, and then I'll draw one of those people too.
You never know.
Okay, so I've got 3 prizes in person, and then I'll do one for online. So I'll give the people online a chance. I'll do that one last. So, well, there's not a lot of names, so almost everybody who enters gets a prize. Okay, so the first prize is a water bottle, medal. It does have a cool photographer photographing a bear on it. So let's do Deb. Yeah, you won! It's COVID friendly. You'll know that no one ever drank out of it. All right. Next. Arnold. You won! You got a water bottle too!
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, now the third prize is a free, unlimited access to all the online workshops that are in my community. It never ends, and there's lots of them in there. So when they're live, it's a live presentation, then they become archived as recorded. So you get access to the recordings and all the course material. So it's a pretty big one. Corbin? You won! So I will email you that code too, so you don't have to type in all of those numbers too, but if you need to. Okay, so for the people who, did anyone enter online? Is there a chat? Ooh, okay. Let's see, how am I gonna do this fairly? Can you blind? Smart. There's 8, okay. A number between 1 and 8, I'm gonna say number 3. Michelle. So Michelle is gonna win the same thing that Corbin did, which is a lifetime access to all the workshops on my online community. And I will email that code to you if you can save that for me. Awesome. Okay, so I can open it to questions. Anybody either online or in person?
So when you're doing your cut lines or your text,
Yeah.
or publication,
Yes.
and I guess your post-production, you usually don't use any creative tools, so you have limits. I know some newspapers
Yeah.
have fidelity.
Absolutely, that's a great question, and I'll repeat it, but but from now on, yeah. So good question. So what he said was, if I'm using truth and captioning for publications, how much post-processing and how much am I divulging? It really depends on the publication and what they do allow. Most photojournalism will not allow any changes. Some don't mind very minor adjustments to exposure. Some will just ask you straight up for the raw file. So I do recommend shooting in RAW whenever possible. That way it just proves you didn't change anything. Depending on the publication, some more artistic publications that aren't really photojournalism focused, they don't care as much, but they might still ask you, what changes did you make? So like I've been published in Outdoor Photographer magazine, and they're a little more open to what you making minor changes, but they will post exactly what settings you did, any changes that you made in the publication, so that you're educating the photo viewers, particularly in that case, photographers, if they're trying to create images like you, they want to know how you did it. So for me, in the work that I do very minor adjustments to anything that I'm doing. If I'm going to do something highly creative like the star trails or that lunar eclipse, I will do it, but I'm very honest. And like the lunar eclipse, I had several publications come to me saying they wanted to publish it, but when I told them how I made it, they wouldn't, because I did it that way. So just being honest, and obviously there's only one moon. It's not like I managed to create multiple moons without manipulating. So being honest, and sometimes that means you might not get published in the way that you did it. So just being very open and honest, because the worst thing that, in my opinion, is lying about it and then they figure it out and they get caught. And that does happen in photo competitions. Wildlife Photographer of the Year, at least once, have had people lose their title because they will go through and make sure that anything you said is accurate. And in that case, there was a photographer who had a beautiful picture of an anteater on a hill with all of these fireflies, and it turns out the animal was stuffed, wasn't a real animal. They claimed it was real, but they figured it out. They figured out that it was not real, and he was very embarrassed. So you just want to be truthful, whether it's photo contests or magazines. It's better to be honest.
When you submit to magazine, is it like, or just try to develop a relationship? You just
Try again.
Suggestion on how to establish a relationship with a magazine.
Yeah.
Blind submission, or do you try to somehow engage them for an assignment?
Yeah.
Or what's?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, so developing relationship with editors is an art all in itself. Editors are known for not replying to you, and it is my biggest frustration in this industry. If I had to say one thing that I hate, is that if you blind submit to editors, I would say a good 90% of the time they never reply. Not say no, just never reply, which is very frustrating. So there are some techniques that I would recommend. If it is somebody you don't have a relationship with already, then finding somebody you know who does and getting an introduction. That is a really good way. If I have a colleague who I know has been published in that magazine, just saying, hey, can you just shoot him an email and give me an introduction? Almost always the editor replies and starts a conversation. We may not get the story in, but I'll at least get a reply. But best is if you can get an in-person meeting with them. So if you are doing any workshops or conferences where those editors are at, and finding any time or even paying for a portfolio review with them, you start to develop those relationships. And then when you start to send those pitches, they do at least tell you why not, or say yes. Great question.
Do you have a question online? From Calais. What are some ways to make money doing conservation photography?
Good question. So a lot of conservation organizations, they don't have a lot of money to go around, or they'll want to use the money for conservation purposes. So one, establishing yourself as a professional. When you are always giving away your work for free, then that is what everyone will expect. So treat yourself like a business. So it is okay sometimes to start a relationship by doing some volunteer work, but being very open and honest where that line is. Once they do realize you have talent and what assets you have, explaining to them that just like, they're going to pay for a website, the website isn't going to give them that for free, or a meeting space or food or whatever else. You as a photographer are an asset, and the images that you use helps them raise awareness, helps them raise money. So building your work into grants, or finding private funders who are willing to pay for you, and just set a day rate. So if I'm working for the Cheetah Conservation Fund, I don't just fly to Africa on my dime and, you know, give them photos. I develop a relationship with them and I say, this is my day rate, this is how much I need. And it's not just necessarily how much I would charge per hour, but think about how much money did you spend if you were going to rent that equipment? How much money did you spend if you were going to get insurance to go there? Your flight, your time, not just time in the field, but time editing. All of that matters, and building up a day rate. And that is a great way to build a clientele of nonprofits. And like I said, if they don't have money, maybe partnering with them on applying for grants. And I do apply for grants a lot. So if I want to work on a project, I might say, I'm going to apply for this grant, but I want to partner with an organization, and grants are more likely to give you funding if you're paired with nonprofits. So maybe the money isn't coming from them, maybe it's coming from grants. Thank you. That's great. Yeah. Any other questions?
So how did you actually get into the conversation? When you, at the very beginning of your presentation, you had the wildlife photographer that you got hooked up with after college. How did you get involved with him in the first place?
Great question. When I was working for Tom Mangelson, I fresh out of college, I didn't know anyone in the industry. I studied photography, but I didn't know very much about wildlife photography. It's not something that they actually taught. So I was looking for a job, and I walked into his gallery. I am an avid art admirer, both photography and other types of art. I do love to just wander into galleries. So I did discover his work by walking into his gallery. And I talked to the gallery owner, asked if they were hiring, and was hired as just a sales associate at first, and then was promoted to an assistant manager. So it wasn't taking pictures, but by doing this, I got to understand how he was making a living, what kind of pictures he was taking, how did he compose those pictures, what was he doing for framing them, you know, what was his pricing scale. It really taught me the business of it, and then connected me with other people who are interested in wildlife photography. It allowed me to have a lot of connections. And then I went to his workshop because that's how I met him, and that's where I met other people. So it was just a way to get my foot in the door into the industry. And it is something I would recommend for anyone really young starting out. Is it doesn't have to be directly photography. Maybe you are working at you know, an animal shelter and you're taking pictures of pets, or maybe you're working at the front desk at a portrait studio. Whatever it is you're interested in, just finding a door to come in and then making those connections as you grow. Good question. Any other questions online? No more questions online. Well, thank you so much. I am really honored to be here, and hopefully you learned something. And if you are interested in any tours or online workshops, please feel free to contact me. So thank you.
Hold on. Bill Yoder just popped up with a question, I think.
Awesome. Yes, Bill Yoder has a quick one.
Yes.
Go ahead, Bill.
As I understand it, you didn't have a professional wildlife background when you started. Do you think that was a positive or a negative?
Yeah, so the question, if you couldn't hear, I didn't have a professional wildlife photography background when I started. And whether that was a positive or negative. Well, that's a great question. I think that when I started, you know, like I said, I've been doing this a really long time. There's a lot more opportunities that are available for people now that weren't available to me as a young kid. So organizations like Girls Who Click and some of these workshops that I've taken, I feel like if I had had that opportunity, I may have been able to make connections earlier, because it did take me a long time to develop those relationships. So I think having those connections as early on as possible is always a benefit. So if you have young people in your life, encourage them to join organizations like PPA or NAMPA, attend workshops, apply for scholarships. Those are things that they didn't have when I was young. The NAMPA does a high school scholarship program and a college scholarship program. So anything that you can do starting out as early as possible, I think is going to just give you a leg up. That's for sure. So yeah, I think it was probably a negative that I didn't have that starting out.
We have one more question. Kalay's asking, how do you find grants? Are there specific organizations to look into?
Good question. Yeah. So there are more obvious grants, and then there's a lot less obvious grants. So, you know, the very first one you would probably think of is, well, National Geographic has a big grant. It's very competitive, obviously. So photography grants, you can literally go on Google and type in wildlife photography grants, and they're going to pop up. That's one of the easiest ways to do it, but you're going to get the obvious answers. So what I would recommend, you know, photography grants is usually, you know, 2,000 people applying for one grant. If you are applying for the lesser known grants that are usually tied to more conservation efforts, they would take a photographer and apply that towards that. And you're going to be a lot less competitive and more likely to get funding for a project. So if, say, for example, I was working on a project on, you know, bee conservation, instead of just applying for a grant and trying to compete with everyone else, maybe I would look for, you know, maybe I'm doing a Google search or looking at organizations that support bees, and they may have individual grants for that specific species. And that's a way easier way of getting funding than competing against other people. But NAMPA has several grants. I do apply to those each year. National Geographic has grants. There is an organization I am involved in called Wild Idea Lab. They have a grant. So again, just type into Google photography grants and they will pop up. Just note that most grants will not fund your whole program. It will give you a little bit of money to get started. So sometimes you'll need multiple grants or multiple private donors to fund an entire project.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah, good question. Any more? Awesome, thank you.
Thank you very much. I have one thing for you from Arizona. It's called a cactus pin.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, we just came out with those not too long ago, and so you're, I think, only the second or third person to receive it.
Love it.
We just started giving them out this year, so
Thank you.
we appreciate your presentation and a lot of great information. Thank you for sharing.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks. All right, let me pull up.
Presentation
Oh,
it was.
thank you.
Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.
Yes,
Thanks
absolutely.
for watching.
I gotta look at my notes here. I'm blind. I gotta put my glasses on. Gotta put my four eyes on. Oh, better watch out. They're going quick. We have our first registration for Fall Fest.
Woo.
All right, so we're always looking for volunteers, either just helping us out, you know, at the monthly meetings, any other type of events that we have, but also convention. So if you have an interest in help facilitating the greatness of Arizona, PPA, we'd love to have you service with us. Talk to Julia, myself, or anybody on the board of directors. We can point you in the right direction. Just looking for volunteers. I have a list here, a whole handful of lists. That's a long, all those lists. But anyway, we're looking for a lot of for the raffles, helping Rick and Clay with marketing. We're looking for Herb that's going to be doing the Friday night photo frenzy stuff. That's going to be a big number. And always remember, anytime you volunteer with Arizona PPA, you know, as a member, you get service merits for these cool little things you have here. You know, the little red ribbon I have, this is for image, but I also had to have some service merits along with that. So remember that anytime you help us help you, that you will be recognized, and we appreciate it. And upcoming, just remember Saturday we have the Dunes, the Imperial Dunes. Look forward to seeing a lot of you there. And then starting in September, we have Chris Woolley, the psychology of pricing. And then October, we have our venerable executive director, Tom Cheswick. He's going to teach us all about lighting modifiers. And of course, don't be late. Don't be last. Sign up for Fall Fest. Early bird is now going till the next meeting. So we love you, and it's great seeing you. And you guys have a good one. And we'll end the meeting now. Guys, have a good evening and a good month.